Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. And, well, time passed. I carried on with my life. I had a job, I married, had my son. It's the admission that nobody anticipated. The most devoted followers of Elvis Presley, as well as his own family, are being shocked by it. After decades of silence, she is now speaking out. Even Elvis Presley's own family was unaware of this disturbing and long-buried secret. The world thought they knew how Elvis Presley's story ended for many years. However, everything is altered by Ginger's truth. There is nothing like this reveal. To call it groundbreaking would be an understatement. You will never again view the king in the same manner after hearing it. Ginger Alden was who? Really, from the outside, she appeared to be just another young, attractive person drawn into Elvis Presley's wider-than-life circle. But Ginger Alden was much more than the elaborate gates of Graceland. She was more than just Elvis Presley's girlfriend at the young age of 20. She was the lady he wanted by his side for what was meant to be the next phase of his life, his chosen fiancée. It now appears that few people ever really comprehended a chapter. Their relationship wasn't formed in the limelight. It was created in the silent areas between dread and fame. When the stage lights went down, the audience vanished, and the weight of being king descended. Ginger caught a glimpse of him. He wasn't entertaining her. He was disintegrating in her presence. He would wander the hallways barefoot at 3 a.m, lost in thought, and frequently mutter about feeling imprisoned, not just by the outside world, but also by the version of himself that society required of him. What if I just left it all behind? Or what if I could just disappear without anyone realizing? Were some of the things he would remark. He was serious. Not at all. He read a ton of literature about reincarnation, spirituality, and transformation. He talked about legacy as if it were a liability rather than an asset. He once said to her, "The most beautiful prison you'll ever see is fame." Then came the murmurs, the odd, disjointed thoughts of beginning anew. A new identity, a place where no one would discover him. Ginger acknowledges that she wasn't sure if he was sincere or if he was just trying to test her commitment. But she could tell one thing by the expression in his eyes. He meant it. He even made a suggestion that he was receiving assistance, someone beyond Graceland, someone who knew how these things are carried out. Was that just late-night conversation then? Or was the most famous person in America, Elvis Presley, secretly preparing the most contentious disappearance in contemporary history? How close did he get, if at all? No one wanted to discuss the odd behavior. During their last several weeks, together, Ginger saw a shift in Elvis. Not only did he appear particularly worn out or preoccupied at times, but his general vitality also showed. There was a change. He gave off the impression of being more introspective and focused, almost like he was counting down to something. However, what? He ceased discussing his daily activities. No information about future appearances or recording dates. Rather, his mind strayed to concepts of reinventing himself and beginning anew in an unfamiliar environment. At one point, he said to her, "Perhaps I'll wake up somewhere no one knows me. I'm not referred to as the king anywhere." His tone was not one of melancholy. There was relief, if nothing else. He started collecting and storing old mementos, letters, photos, and personal belongings. Ginger saw him carefully sorting some documents by putting them in envelopes. On certain evenings, he would spend hours talking quietly on the phone, while in a room with the door closed. He would merely smile and respond, "Just someone helping me figure things out." When she inquired who he was speaking to, Ginger initially thought he was organizing a vacation or possibly another artistic endeavor. However, the sensation became more intense as the days went by. There was no halt here. This served as planning. Elvis was preparing a tour or something far more long-term. A letter with no public view? After many years, Ginger Alden finally shared something she had long held a secret. One of Elvis Presley's numerous personal items, hidden away from prying eyes, was a handwritten note, not a typed or prepared legal document. It wasn't sent to her, his manager, his lawyer, or even his family. Ginger claims that only she ever opened the hidden drawer where it was written, sealed, and kept. Although the letter wasn't very long, the words were powerful. Elvis made no accusations in it. He did not mention names. Rather, he revealed his inner turmoil. He talked of people who used to hold special meaning for him, but had since turned into aloof, transactional individuals who, in his words, continued to eat away at him until nearly nothing remained. He talked of feeling imprisoned in a version of his life that he had not chosen. A legacy, a brand, or a machine run by others with little remaining influence. In one eerie sentence, he wrote, "I feel like I'm living someone else's life." His thoughts were beautiful, occasionally disjointed, and almost like words that were never matched to music. The way he spoke, rather than the words themselves, was what most surprised Ginger. There was silent, almost eerie resignation instead of rage. It was more of a gentle farewell to a world that never truly allowed him to breathe than it was a letter. She claims to have read that letter numerous times, particularly in the years that followed, and each time something new would catch her attention. A pause, a word, a phrase, something she hadn't previously noticed, and she posed the same query to herself each time. Why would the world's greatest man compose a letter as though it were a farewell, a last night filled with signs? Ginger recalls Elvis being more animated than normal the night before everything changed. Like a guy with a secret he could hardly keep, there was a gleam in his eyes. He discussed plans, not nebulous aspirations, but concrete, step by step, procedures for something significant and intimate. In order to avoid giving too much away, he even advised her to bring a little suitcase. He then grinned in that half-joking manner. He remarked, "We might be going on a trip that no one would believe." That evening, he read literature about spirituality and philosophy. As though ready to depart quickly, but not out of panic, he scrawled notes in the margins, wrote sentences on scrap paper, and neatly piled possessions next to the door. He moved a few items and hummed to himself. Then he came to a stop. His attitude abruptly altered. He grew silent and concentrated. He turned to Ginger and told her that he needed some time to himself. "I have a final task to complete," he said. He then moved slowly down the corridor before vanishing into Graceland's shadows, leaving Ginger standing there with an odd, oppressive silence on her chest. What was the last thing you did? And why did it seem like saying goodbye without actually saying it? The moment that continues to trouble her. Ginger claims that when she woke up hours later, she discovered something was amiss, not only with the space, but with the house's whole energy. Elvis wasn't in his customary location. His little rituals and habits, which he adhered to religiously, had been disrupted. He had turned off the lights he usually left on. His favorite chair hasn't changed. His belongings were arranged properly, but the atmosphere seemed empty for some reason. Time itself seemed to have stopped. She remained calm. Not initially. There were no overt indications of worry, no flipped furniture, no hurriedly written note, no sound, no trace. Just a strong feeling that something had vanished silently. Ginger was almost expecting him to yell her name from another room as she silently made her way through the house. However, the quiet remained, and she was most surprised that nobody else in the vicinity appeared to be genuinely concerned. Nobody made inquiries. Nobody appeared keen to look into it. It didn't make sense at all the more she tried to make sense of it. Years later, she can still remember that uncanny silence. Not with sadness, but with curiosity, as though something had started and she was the only one who noticed. Is it possible that what she saw was only the start of something hidden rather than the end? The subsequent quiet. For Ginger Alden, everything altered in the days that followed. She wasn't merely in mourning. They were silently erasing her. Once friendly and hospitable, the Presley family became more aloof. The talks were short. No eye contact was made. Nobody questioned her about what she had heard, seen, or how she was handling things. It seemed as though she had become inconvenient, and the circumstances of those last few hours had grown too delicate and complex. She was instructed to keep quiet when the media became involved. Additionally, her remarks were cut, mispronounced, or completely disregarded when she did speak politely and kindly. She turned become a scapegoat and a target. Without ever knowing her narrative, the world chose to place the responsibility on the young woman. Ginger took what she believed to be her only remaining course of action. From the story, she vanished. She didn't say much in public. She kept the things that were important to her in private. Elvis's letter, his parting remarks, and the peculiar directions he gave her in a whisper that evening. It was all ingrained in her memory. She never made an effort to make money out of her knowledge. She didn't write captivating autobiographies or try to make headlines. She only waited, bearing a truth that became more pressing with each year that went by. She's now prepared to express it aloud after decades of keeping quiet. Her confession alters everything for the first time. Ginger Alden finally revealed a truth she had held for almost 40 years in a private, off-camera interview that was only shared with people she trusted. There was no startling change in tone or dramatic outburst. She spoke slowly and methodically, as if she were finally letting out a breath she had been holding for years. Her words nevertheless struck with a silent intensity. Ginger claims that Elvis wasn't concentrating on making a spectacular comeback to the stage in his last days. He wasn't planning his tour or practicing his act. According to her, he was planning a whole new life, one that went beyond the stage and the name, a complete departure from the unrelenting expectations that had followed him since he was a youngster. He talked about vanishing, not out of fear but with power, of starting over somewhere far away, disconnected and unencumbered by a legacy that had grown more of a burden than a boon. Ginger characterized him as clear-eyed, composed, and purposeful, rather than defeated. He preferred to be remembered as a myth that was unaltered, rather than as a man in decline. She made it apparent that Elvis had the means and the will. He had given it some thought. He had prepared in secret. He had even hinted at the possible course of events, but never in enough detail to allow for a whole puzzle to be put together. The word faked was never used by Ginger. She didn't have to. Her calm demeanor and the assurance in her voice conveyed everything. Is it true? Had Elvis Presley planned the most enigmatic departure in the history of music? A rewritten legacy. Ginger Alden didn't seek stardom. She didn't market dramatic tales. She didn't go on a press tour or write obscene books. She remained silent for decades. She felt that some topics were too sacred to discuss, not because she was terrified. However, she claims that the burden of what she knows has grown too great for her to bear alone as the years have gone by and memories have gotten more vivid. There is no drama associated with her confession. There are no charges associated with it. It is accompanied by a silent form of heartbreak, the kind that results from loving someone who might have opted to vanish rather than have their celebrity harm them. She still refuses to express some things out. However, a door that has never been opened before has been opened by her words, tone, and timing. What would have happened if Elvis Presley had not perished in Graceland? What if he left everything behind and just one person was aware of it? What do you think? Tell us in the comments section. Sometimes the truth just waits, so if you're prepared for more tales the world was never meant to hear, be sure to subscribe.